Good evening and welcome to Moving Forward, a program produced by the Bay and Grandstown Advancement Association. On this program, we seek to identify issues of importance to Bay and Grandstown, but also to the nation. We also address regional and international issues. The objective is to just not talk about these issues, but seek to remove them from the way forward as it relates to our nation. Over the last several years, no subject has been talked about as much as crime in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And unfortunately, it is going to remain a subject of great debate for the foreseeable future, because following 2015, when we racked up an astounding number of homicides, 149, surpassing by far the record of 127 experienced in 2011, 2016 has started off on the same path. As a matter of fact, at this particular point, we are at roughly the same point we were last year in homicides, which accumulated that astounding record. Now, we don't know too much about the other crimes because we do not get those numbers as regularly as we do the homicide count. And so in this evening's program, we want to really look at what could be done to address this scourge in our nation. We've been saying for years that the way forward is to bring all of our resources together. And I think the greatest tragedy in this whole thing is that we have been underutilizing our resources. And this evening we want to focus on one of those resources, and that is one that I feel is perhaps as important or more important than many of the others. We're talking about our women, the Bahamian women. Historically, they have always been in the forefront of major changes. They have led the fight against problems that arose in our society. In fact, during a period when a lot of our men were away on a contract, that is working in the United States on the farms, our women led the society by and large, particularly in the over-the-hill communities. And so it has always concerned us that our women seem not to be engaged to the extent that they can be in this fight, given the fact that women are at the center of the whole thing, in that they appear to be the ones suffering the most from the effects of crime, whether it's directly as it relates to their children, their husbands, family members, or just out of their role in society, that of nurturing and their compassion. And so we really want to talk about how better to involve our women. That is a power that is very latent right now, but we must awaken that power and use it to address this serious problem. Because when many of the perpetrators of crime will listen to no one, will respond to no one else, they'll respond to a woman in their life, whether it's a girlfriend, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, an old aunt, or somebody. Somehow we must find a way to focus that power that exists on the problem. And so with that as a background, I should like to introduce our distinguished panel of guests this evening. At my far right is Mrs. Gladys Johnson-Sands, a businesswoman, a radio talk show host, a former senator, a former consul general in Miami, a person with a wealth of knowledge, particularly having been very active in the political arena for quite a number of years. And then we have Dr. Sandra Dean Patterson, the director of the Bahamas Crisis Center. I need not tell you about her influence in this area, her interest in addressing crime, initially as it related to women, because the organization was first called the Women's Crisis Center. It has been expanded now to the Bahamas Crisis Center. I suppose at one point you felt that the women were more in crisis, but you come to realize that the whole country is in crisis. And it's very appropriate that you respond, because that's what the organization did by expanding its not only name but its activities to acknowledge the crisis that exists in the country. And then we have Nurse Larry Miller Ferguson, the president of the Baintown chapter of Women Against Crime, a special group that has been formed to do exactly what we are trying to encourage others to do. And so, ladies, a pleasant good evening to all of you. Now, none of you need very much introduction. However, we are going to give an opportunity for you to just say something briefly about yourself to those who may not be aware of who you are and what you do.
Okay.
Senator.
Well, I'm Gladys Johnson-Sands, former senator and former consul general to Florida, and certainly I think my role here today is mother.
Yes.
Because I have 2 sons who I'm very, very proud of, and also share most of the challenges that any mother in the Bahamas have shared with their children. I wouldn't say all the challenges, but certainly we all have challenges bringing up and rearing children in this country. And in addition to that, I've always been involved in business. My husband and I are involved in a business now, and I am in the process of starting up new businesses that are geared toward women. That's interesting.
Wow.
Women, and ensuring that I create markets, and that's what I want to do, create an opportunity, particularly for women that are unemployed, to be able to bring to the public whatever it is that they are able to produce. Because I think people should be able to make $1 any day once they are productive. And so that is my new interest and quest. And I also am a radio talk show host, as you're aware, on 103.5 FM, and I come on 3 days out of the week, and I talk politics because I love politics, because Bahamians love politics.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it also drives the direction the country goes in. So it's very important, I feel, to be able to share opinions and views that affect us and the leadership of our country, and really engage to the extent that we also participate and make a difference.
Well, wonderful introduction. Dr. Patterson.
Well, I'm a mental health clinician, and you and I would have been involved in the hands across Bahamas when I was working in Sandilands and working with substance abuse, and it was a tremendous gift that we got as a result of that experience. And at that time, I became very concerned about the number of women who were being admitted to Sandilands and admitted to hospital with domestic violence issues, childhood issues of incest, childhood issues of abuse, and the women had decompensated into mental illness, and they were coming in with substance abuse themselves or with some kind of psychiatric illness. So we thought to set aside a new mechanism to enable us to access women at the time of the trauma, so that you could prevent them from becoming mentally ill and ending up in Sandilands. And that's how we created the Women's Crisis Center in 1982. And then over the years, we began to see boys, we began to see teenagers, and we began to hear from men. And so in 1997, we changed the name to the Bahamas Crisis Center, so that we are now a comprehensive center for men, women, and children. And we are especially concerned now with the crime rate of the crisis in masculinity, the crisis in men. I don't think we understand, I don't think we have incorporated what has happened to our boys with this, with the new roles of women. Some men are not handling the new roles as well as they might. And the definition of masculinity causes men to hold on to the need to be power, to be in control, and those are the issues that can cause them to end up in criminal activities. So I think it's so important for us to come together and work together. That is the only way we will begin to make a difference.
Absolutely. Nurse.
Okay, good afternoon. Again, I'm Nurse Larry Miller Ferguson, registered nurse, midwife, community health nurse, presently retired. And I thought I'd just take it a little bit easy, and I volunteered to do the community health aspect in the Baintown area. But after that time, Reverend Moss got a hold of me and asked about the president of the Women Against Crime. And I thought it was a challenge, so I took it on. And we are struggling and fighting to reduce the rate of crime, and especially among our young men, where we seem to be having all the problems. We looked at the Baintown community simply because it's been always said to be a hot spot for crime. So we decided, let us work within our own community first and then move out. So here I am with a group. We're working one by one, and then now we're presently with a group of young boys, fourth grade young boys, on a Wednesday evening, and just trying to see what they're thinking. And get them talking to us, and have speakers and other persons who would sort of stimulate them and get them going in the right direction. So that's me.
Well, we are so proud of Nurse Ferguson. She was born and grew up in Baintown. The homestead is still there. And she is evidence that I'm half crazy. Because once we found out she had retired from the government service, we roped her in and appointed her director of community health for Bain Grantstown. She's done a wonderful job there. You may recall last year, I think it was, when we had the scabies scare. With her team, she went through that community and provided information and printed material that I would like to believe had a positive impact on the situation there. And then she, I think last November, arranged the first health fair that we've had in Baintown. And that was extremely successful, and we're organizing a similar event for Grantstown now, which should be in the next several weeks. As if that wasn't enough, I said, you seem to have a lot of energy left. Why not come on and help us with Women Against Crime, which was an auxiliary of Bahamas Against Crime that was launched to specifically engage women into this fight. And I think that's the basis of our discussion this evening. But once we know you have some time or some energy, we're coming for you. We're going to recruit you, and we're going to press you into service, because the situation is too dire for any of us to be relaxing on the beach and say, I retire. We have a major announcement that was made just today, that Mr. Winston Sweeting, the recently retired Senior Deputy Director of Environmental Health, has just been appointed Director of Environmental Health for Bain Grantstown. And so once I hear you retire, don't let me read that anyway, if you retire and hide from me. Because once you are retired, I'm going to call you and try to recruit you. And so Mr. Sweeting has already hit the ground running, and we've got a major environmental project designed for Baintown, which is to be formally announced later this month. And so we're so glad that persons like Nurse Miller, who, even though they are in their very well-deserved retirement years, are still willing to come out and just apply themselves. And we have another position for her, but we're not going to tell her about that right now. We're going to let her get her, we're going to let her get her feet on the ground with this first. And so it is a great pleasure and a privilege to be with all of you fine, distinguished ladies who have all achieved very much in your lifetime and contributed a tremendous amount to the development of the Bahamas. Now, back to the topic. I've always maintained that women are powerful, not in a threatening way. See, we should not be afraid of allowing our women to utilize their abilities and to maximize the potential that God has placed in them. There's nothing to be afraid of. They've got their roles, we have our roles as men, and we work together. I believe, as we've been saying, and as you said a few minutes ago, Dr. Patterson-Dean, that we have to work together. Men, women, boys, girls, the public sector, the private sector, the church, the business, the government,
The politicians.
the politicians.
Right.
We must all.
Right.
We don't mind who you are. See, listen. The thing that unites us is far greater. That is, we are Bahamians, citizens of this great country. That is far greater than anything that divides us. And so we must get that message across. And that's what Bahamas Against Crime and our group have been trying to do over the years, get us all to understand. It's easy to place blame and point fingers, and that's okay as long as things are not that bad, but when things begin to fall apart, as our society is obviously doing, then we need to stop that. We need to put aside our differences and get together. So we need to recruit all those who have something to offer, and women certainly have something to offer. And the idea to introduce Women Against Crime came when we reflected on Mothers Against Drunk Driving in the United States. We will all recall the tremendous positive impact that had on the drunk driving figures in the States. It just plummeted once mothers became involved. And so we thought we would expand it a little, not just mothers, because we live in a society where grandmothers play a very significant role in the lives of our people, especially our young men. Grandmothers, girlfriends, wives. So we just call it Women Against Crime. And we're trying to encourage women throughout this nation to address the fact that they have something to offer, starting at home. Let's talk about the home, ladies. What can women do in the home to impact this crime situation as mothers, as sisters, as grandmothers, as aunts in the home environment?
Well, you know, there's an African proverb that we use at the Crisis Center, and that is, the ruin of a nation starts in the homes of its people.
That's right.
The ruin of a nation, and is what's going on in the homes between husbands and wives, mothers and fathers, parents and children that needs to be addressed. And if you don't deal with the pain, the suffering, the anger, the alienation or isolation that occurs in the home, you aren't going to be able to provide the kinds of healthy citizens, emotionally healthy citizens that we need in the country. So we say that the home is where it all begins, and the home is what we must make safe. Unfortunately, in today's Bahamas, the home is not a safe place for many people. For many women and children, and even some men, the home is not safe. There's a lot of violence, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. And so it's very important that we let persons know that if they're experiencing this, that they can get some help, that there are ways to address it.
And your take on that?
Yes, I feel that, and I certainly agree with Dr. Patterson's statement. I feel that the responsibility of parents, especially today, have to be taken more seriously, because I never abdicate responsibility for my children, and I don't think any parent should do so either, not because it's my standard, but it's because it's a God-given responsibility. Nobody is more responsible for your children as you should be or are.
That's right.
And so we talk about the government, we talk about the law enforcement, we talk about the school, we talk about the teacher, but it begins, like Dr. Patterson, it begins with us. It begins at home. And who knows our children better than we know them?
That's right.
We are we're the ones that brought them into the world. And so we ought to know them, but more than just knowing them, we ought to be the example for them. The way we live, like they say always. You don't tell a child how to behave, but you have to, don't tell them, don't do what I do, do as I say.
No.
That doesn't work.
No.
Because children are like an empty slate. To me, they're born just like a slate. And we feed into their lives every day. You're nurturing, but you're teaching. They're watching, they're like a sponge, and they just absorb what we do and what we say.
That's right.
And so we create our children's self-image. We create their personalities. We have to shape that child. And so what they become, I think, is primarily the responsibility of the parent. That's my position.
And
Well-
if you expose them to violence, if
Yes,
they
become
That's right.
violent.
yeah, that's what they internalize.
There's no question
you
about
know,
that.
they accept it,
Yes.
and they either perpetrate it or accept it in their own relationships.
In their own
and so
lives,
it's a
that's right.
self-perpetuating thing.
right, that's
So
right.
we don't have to wonder why persons are so violent and angry. We have to look
Yes.
at what's going on in the family, and we need to address it early on.
Well, we're going to pick up with Nurse Miller after this quick break.